Welcome to the arena.
Big battlefield.
Yeah, welcome back to Baked Battlefields, guys. This is a podcast where we get pleasantly elevated and then attempt to explain why medieval Europe had 19 different men claiming the same throne, 6 of whom were named Charles, and none of whom appeared capable of discussing how they felt. Today, we are traveling to northern France, okay, or what was not quite France yet, to discuss the Battle of Soissons, all right, on June 15th, 923. And this battle has possibly the strangest results that we have encountered so far on the podcast. All right. We got 2 rival kings in this one. Charles the Simple, or Charles the Simple, and Robert the First of West Francia. Okay.
Was
Charles the
simple like a pleasant way of saying retarded? Charles the
I knew you were
retard.
gonna fucking say that.
Yeah, people have called me that.
I
Alex
knew
Woody
you
the
were gonna
Simple. I've heard Alex
I
Woody
knew
the
you were
Simple
gonna
and
fucking
Alex
say
Woody.
that.
I've heard Alex Woody the Simp. I don't know which one's worse.
I specifically looked up the answer to this because I knew you were gonna fucking say that. So, his nickname comes from the Latin simplex, which probably meant straightforward or like sincere rather than stupid. Okay. Um, he's he's actually Charles the Third. Okay, but he's known as Charles the Simple. He's born in 879 and he ruled West Francia from 898 until 922. Now, his political enemies certainly did not consider him to be an especially effective king. His reign, though, was enormously consequential. He gained control of an area called Lotharingia, and he negotiated the settlement that created Normandy. And he attempted to preserve the Carolingian royal authority against increasingly independent rebels and nobles. Okay. But he relied on this really unpopular, it's called a favorite, which means that they cross swords a lot. Guy's name was Agano. And that relationship.
That sounds like a little pool boy from Nicaragua, just a little tan fellow. That's, yanking them during
Agano.
yanking them during dinner. Why is he always sitting next to you?
Exactly.
Feeding him, he's cutting his steak for him and feeding him. No homo, but yeah.
So that relationship provokes the rebellion with Robert the First. Okay, so obviously Robert the First was a homophobe. And here we are.
Really, that really pissed him off, because I really feel like back then it was like acceptable. Like a lot of people were gay or bi.
So, yeah. So in the ancient context, in antiquity, all the way through kind of the early medieval era, you see that a lot. It's almost like it is now, right? It's common. Right. We all know it's out in front of us, and most of us don't give a shit, right? Most of us are like, whatever, right. Teach their own.
Just don't do it in front of me.
Even in antiquity. Please don't cup his balls right next to me at Starbucks. And they don't, so it's not a problem. But even in antiquity, they had people who were opposed to that kind of behavior. Okay. But generally, those people hated everything anyway. So now we are in the 10th century. We're in the early 10th century for this one. Things are changing quite a bit because of the control that Christianity, Catholic Christianity or Nicene Christianity, has on Western Europe, especially. Okay, so that there's a real big push of having high moral standards, and we're not quite at the chivalry stage yet, but that's developing. So this kind of behavior, it's a king. Generally, you can't say shit. Um, it would have been allowed, certainly, but you're going to get a lot more resistance against it. But you also have to understand that people that were ambitious and had the money and the relationships and the armies, they were looking for any possible reason to overthrow it. And Robert just hated Agano. That's just what it came down to. He was not. Most people didn't like Agano, but
Well, he was loud and
Robert the
annoying and hello. It's like, dude, come on, we're at the library right
Bonjour.
now. Can you stop wearing assless
Oh my
chaps? We're in
god!
the library, all right? Jesus.
It said library.
Livery.
It's not a fucking fruit. It's not a fucking fruit.
Shows how much I've been there.
Yeah, exactly. So Robert the First was born somewhere around 865. He is one of the most powerful aristocrats in West Francia, long before this rebellion happens. He is the younger brother of King Odo, and he belonged to the Robertian family. And this is the dynasty that would eventually produce Hugh Capet, and that's the Capetian line is the one that will be the kings of France until the very end. Okay, um, Robert earned prestige fighting against Vikings that had come down the Seine and attacked Paris and other cities. And he
Yeah.
actually defeats them in 9/11 at the Battle of Chartres. And that is what forced the Viking Rollo into negotiations. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But and then Rollo becomes the Norman king, and his grandson is William the Conqueror, who does the Norman invasion of
Oh.
England, ends the Viking Age, and then you get Normans, right? So all this shit's connected, right? Um, so in 922, a year before this battle, nobles opposing Charles the Simple elect Robert to be their king. Okay, so now you have two kings, and that is going to be problematic, right?
Yeah, how's that work? I mean, that'd be like having two presidents,
It's war, man. At that point, it just comes down to who's going to win. There's no
right?
runoff election. There's no Supreme Court. It's this side wants this guy,
The
this side wants that guy. Well, we're going to duke it out.
the election was stolen.
Exactly.
The de- the Dems eat ice cream. They eat the fruity ice cream.
The Democrats, they're letting gays into the palace.
That's crazy.
So,
So yeah, I
Char-
mean, legally though, there wasn't two kings. It was just like one side wanted someone else, one side wanted the other one, and
yeah.
yeah.
And really you can say that this kind of behavior is actually an echo of the former Western Roman Empire. Okay, because this happened all the time in the waning days of the Roman Empire in the West. You see an emperor dies, And then the army in Gaul raises up this guy to be the new emperor, and the army in Italy raises this guy up to be the emperor. And then it's like, well, we're going to fight it out. So this is acceptable behavior by their standards. It's known behavior, and it's come through the Roman tradition. All right. Charles was a legitimate ruler. Okay. He was a legitimate monarch, and he came from the Carolingian dynasty. Okay. And this is the ruling family that produced Charlemagne. Okay. And begins the Holy Roman Empire. And they dominate most of Western and Central Europe from the 700s through the 900s. Okay. Um, and its name comes from the family's repeated use of the name Charles. Charlemagne, we just say Charlemagne as a name. It actually means it's Charlemagne, which means Charles the Great. Okay. Um, so he was a Charles. And, his empire represented the dynasty's political and cultural high point. Okay. By 923, Carolingian kings like Charles the Simple possessed a really impressive bloodline, but they struggled to control these powerful nobles. All right. Now, a little bit more about Charlemagne, because he's a really important historical character. He's born in 747, and he rules as the king of Franks before he is crowned on Christmas Day in the year 800 by the Pope as what will become the Holy Roman Emperor. Okay. And they do this because the head of the empire is still in Constantinople. That's also kind of where the Pope is trying to keep relations. All right. But in 800, a female becomes empress, and the Pope refuses to acknowledge that. So then he turns to his most powerful European leader, Charles the Great, and he goes, hey, you are actually going to be the continuation of Rome through the church. And I, on behalf of God, will crown you Holy Roman Emperor. All right. So that's how that whole thing goes down. And he creates a massive empire. He really, really does. Um, and it changes how Europe is going to look forevermore. Okay. So
So this is setting up
Robert,
the gay guy. This set up the gay guy to do.
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Hey, thanks a lot.
So
I'm gonna fuck around.
yeah, right, exactly. So
So
Robert
Robert's
is,
pissed.
yeah, and he's immensely powerful. Okay, he's a nobleman, and his family had already produced a king, um, who would eventually produce an entirely new French royal dynasty. Okay, the Capetians. Um, so Robert is elected and crowned as rival king in 922, and Charles, understandably, objects to being replaced while he's still alive, right? And a
Right.
year later, Charles will return at the head of an army, and he will attack Robert near the city of Soissons. All right.
He came up. He came up behind him. We attack from the back. Pull their pants down before you
right up
stab
the
them.
right up the poop chute.
Charles
So
was pissed.
today,
Charles was pissed. He's
Charles was
he
furious.
he was probably getting sucked off on the throne. Like, what? Are you kidding me? Hang on a second. Hang
Exactly.
on. Go clean the pool. You know?
Exactly. We got to stop skiing. Hold on.
Yeah.
So there's two different stories about this battle, and we are going to discuss both versions. Okay. Um, the history that we can reasonably reconstruct and the incredible story that medieval writers later build around this battle. Okay, it's far more than just a run of the mill battle. Okay, this is a pivotal moment in history. Okay, um, it's a story of two kings, one throne, a surprise attack, a disputed battlefield, um, and shit goes crazy. All right, so today is the Battle of Soissons.
I'm just thinking, before you get in the battle, and I mean, you just see it in history. It's crazy that the egos are so big and no one could be like, oh, well, yeah, he could be king, like I could help out. It's like, no, I'm king. I want the full power and cut
Yep,
out the gay stuff, you know.
yep, yep. And it's an
Eh, eh,
interesting it's an interesting point in history because they didn't they didn't go from father to son at this point. Okay, they were blending into the Roman model with their tribal culture, and a lot of the Gallic tribes would vote on who the king would be, or the king would actually, let's say he had three sons. When he died, he would actually split his kingdom up amidst his three sons. So,
well,
in
they
theory, it made sense to them, but it really fucked things up, especially the bigger they got.
they probably just came to that conclusion by making mistakes of giving a kingdom to a son that just wants to snort gunpowder and kill people and eat chicken legs and just people that's ruining kingdoms because they're just power
100%.
hungry and they don't care about anyone else. So they're like, maybe we should vote, But then you even
Exactly.
know,
It-
but then you even know with voting, there's fraud and people are manipulated,
Hell
and
yeah.
so
And
there's
corruption and all that. Yeah.
right. That's why nothing gets done now. No
Yeah.
matter who's in power, because you have to shake hands with people and make backdoor deals and to get to that position, right? So when a bill comes up for them
100%.
to pass, they can't pass the bill because they give Joe Schmo, you know, they took money from him. So
Yeah. That's 100%
yeah,
correct. 100% correct.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Um,
democracy is great, but it's never fully gonna work because there's always gonna be a rat, you know.
yeah. 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 And it's not just democracy. I mean, you see it in every form of government. Um, there's going to be people behind the scenes pulling, levers and just intrigue going on and corruption and all of that. Yeah. I mean, it's part of the human condition. When we are given power, we, we want more. And the problem is that we are fearful by nature. So when you have that power and everything that goes with it, a lot of these guys get really fucking paranoid. And that drives them to make a lot of these really, really crazy fucking decisions that you hear throughout
I
history.
I wonder what power feels like. I've never had it in my life.
I
I've
know,
never had
right?
power. I want to know what it feels like. It must be addicting. It must be
It
addicting when
is.
you're screwing over family, you're screwing over friends and innocent people. You know, it's
Yep.
it must just be like a drug.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. And they act that way. Um, there's that famous quote. I think it was Lord Byron, and it's power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Um, and they do. And that's why so many sociopaths make it to the top because they don't give a shit. They don't care. Um,
Yeah.
so where are we? We are not quite in France yet. Um, the battlefield lies near the city of Soissons. Beautiful, beautiful city. Um, and it's on the River Ain. So this is northeast of Paris. Okay. I mean, obviously today, unquestionably a part of France, but in 923, the kingdom was more properly called West Francia. All right. West Francia emerges from this slow disintegration of Charlemagne's enormous empire. All right. Charlemagne ruled individually over most of Western and Central Europe. So France and some of Germany. And Christmas Day, year 800, he gets crowned emperor in Rome. But his empire depended heavily on the authority, personality, and military prestige and the enormous resources of Charlemagne, right? He was able to do it all. And once he dies, his heirs divide this empire up. And just like we were talking about, it wasn't irrational to them. We think about it now and we're like, boy, that's a stupid fucking idea. But it wasn't to them, right? This is Frankish political tradition treated a kingdom in some respects as a family inheritance. Um, the problem was that dividing a gigantic imperial system among multiple ambitious relatives created exactly the sort of like stable political environment you would expect from giving three brothers ownership of like a single bar, right? They're going to beat the shit
Right.
out of each other.
Right. You always see those bar rescue show or like the Gordon Ramsay restaurant makeover. It's always a family and there's always a brother that's not doing shit and there's always one brother out of the three that's trying their hardest, but no one's helping, you know?
Exactly. So true, man.
And there's no one to
Um,
yell at them. They have all the power. Who's going to yell at them? They're going to get killed if they're spoken
yeah,
to, you know. And that's the
yeah,
problem, and you see it nowadays where someone raises their hand and then they're fired, you know.
yeah, exactly, exactly. I mean, and even at the political stage, we're watching the First Amendment disintegrate, and that's why the First Amendment is so important, is because you cannot have a society that lives in fear of saying the wrong thing. That isn't kosher at all, you know.
Well,
But you're
I don't
absolutely
want to
right.
go
Back
down
then
a
it
rabbit
was.
hole, but I don't want to go down a rabbit hole, but people in England are getting arrested for speaking their minds on social media. You know,
Hmm.
it's coming back around. Um, like the medieval days, like the times we're talking now, where if you speak out, you're not necessarily going to be killed, but you're going to be detained and you're going to be silenced, you know?
Yeah, yeah, exactly right. And that's why these stories are so important, because you discover that, like, holy shit, this is an echo. Like, this isn't new. This is something that happens. And like, maybe there's a way for us to prevent it from being a repetition of history, right? But if you don't study it, you're not going to be able to make that conclusion. So, um, and yeah, back then it was brutal. The brothers beat the shit out of each other for decades in a civil war. Um, a lot of fighting, a lot of diplomacy, a lot of death and repartition. And that leads us to the Treaty of Verdun. Okay. And the Treaty of Verdun is what divided the Carolingian Empire among Charlemagne's grandsons. And this is in 843. Okay. Charles the Bald gets West Francia. Louis the German receives East Francia. And Emperor Lothar the First gets Middle Francia. And I know this sounds
So
like a Lord of the Rings episode, but
Sounds like the
I swear
mob.
it's real.
Hey, yeah, you a child's the Bob. You know, Frankie the cop.
Yo,
Yeah.
we got Louis the German, but his mother's Sicilian, so we let him in. Um, so the western portion, West Francia. Okay, this is Charles' hometown. Um, it included most of what would eventually become modern day France, but its eastern and southern boundaries differed significantly from those of the modern country. Okay. And by
Yeah.
923, West Francia was less a tightly governed nation state than just a patchwork of counties and duchies and bishoprics and monasteries and local lordships who the rulers often possessed more immediate power than the king. Um, and then you got East Francia, okay, and that's more like Germany, right? Um, this is Louis the
Mhm.
German takes this, okay. This is east of the Rhine, and it will actually develop later on into the kingdom of the Ottonian dynasty. And this is where really the political foundation of the Holy Roman Empire is established. And by the early 900s, East Frankish troops, excuse me, rulers, um, were competing with Charles the Simple for influence over Lotharingia. Okay. Um, and Charles gets preoccupied with that eastern frontier. Okay. It alarmed a lot of West Frankish nobles. Um, and the nobles think that he's actually neglecting their interests while devoting attention and resources to territories beyond the traditional like Western kingdom. And that's another problem we have here, right? Um, so the awkward middle territory, okay, and this extends from the North Sea down to Italy. Okay, this is Middle Francia. This is where the hobbits live. Okay,
Right. Right.
Emperor
Yeah.
Lothar the
Roman there.
First, he rules it. All right, it's a narrow corridor right in the middle there. So you get the
Which
Low
is scary,
Countries. You get
you know, because
what's
you're
scary about it.
surrounded by enemies. Well, you're surrounded by enemies.
Hmm.
It's like the Middle East. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Um, Yeah, so you have the Low Countries, you have Burgundy, the Alps, that region there, northern and kind of central Italy. Um, it's a super awkwardly carved up piece of land. Um, a lot of different cultures, very diverse, and extremely difficult to hold together. And it when Lothar dies in 855, it gets kind of fragmented again. Okay. And this is where the Eastern and Western rulers come in, and they're looking at places like Lorraine and Burgundy and Italy to carve up. Um,
Well, they're
the
probably
Middle
waiting for someone.
Kingdom,
They're waiting for
go
someone to
ahead.
die. You know what I mean? So they're
Yeah.
like, oh,
Oh,
their
they
ruler died.
always
Let's go in now. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Pull your pants up. Let's go.
right.
You
Exactly. Exactly. That's absolutely true, though.
know. Yeah.
And and one of the particularly important northern regions of Middle Francia becomes known as Lotharingia. Okay, and that's where eventually we get the name Lorraine. But it's named after Lothar the Second, Lotharingia. Um, and this is the area that covers like Meuse and Moselle and the Lower Rhine. Um, it's going to include modern day Luxembourg, parts of Belgium and Netherlands and some of Germany. Um, And Charles the Simple gained recognition as king there in 911. And this gave him a lot of resources and prestige, but it was pulling his attention east, like I said, right? And that becomes a sticking point. Um, and Lotharingia became his refuge. Okay, once this Robertian rebellion begins, um, to confront Mister Roberts of Soissons. Um, so it's
So
a
he's gaining
just an
power.
absolute, yeah, it's an absolute egg scramble, man. It's just a mess.
Yeah, no, it's about taking regions and then keep moving on and getting more and building the team, right? The team of
Yeah,
gentlemen.
yeah,
So now
yeah.
he's got short people on his side. He's got black, white, tall, short, women. He's like, I want them all. I want them all on the battlefront.
a, re-
Put the short ones up
a
front.
Republican's nightmare. That is a Republican's nightmare, led by a gay guy. Um, so it's and West Francia is a mess because, like I said, he doesn't have the authority to really run even his own kingdom. Um, so he has alienated too many powerful men, um, and it creates tension even within his own kingdom, and that's problematic. Okay, um, he gets charged later on as being a really bad ruler.
Yeah.
um, but he was not an idiot. He was not simple. I think where he kind of trips up is that he repeatedly misunderstood the political limits to his throne or of his throne. And in the 900s in West Francia, misunderstanding your nobility could be a fatal mistake. It's just the way it was back then.
What? We can't rape and pillage? Come on. That was in the contract.
I didn't walk 100 miles not to, do the thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like we talked about, it's everyone that comes into power. There is no
Yeah,
limitations when you're power hungry. You can't limit that,
right.
right? So you can
Yeah.
tell the people that are there for the people and the people that aren't for the people. And this guy sounds like he
Yep.
was for himself.
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk about these guys.
And we're
So let's get into
and we're talking about him. We're talking about him. So, he didn't make a footprint in history.
um yeah, so we're going to talk about these characters here, all right? Um Charles the Simple was born in 879. His father was Louis the Stammerer, who was king of West Francia.
Get it out, dude. Jesus. We're gonna God. Can't follow this guy in the battle.
Bonjour. It's such a fucked up name.
He didn't even have one. You know
So
what I mean? They just threw him there.
exactly. They're just being dicks. Um, he was Louis the Second, all right, but he's known as Louis the Stammerer. He is the son of Charles the Bald, and he was king of West Francia from 877 until 879. His reign was really brief, and his early death contributed to kind of a succession crisis that really is what destabilized the Western Carolingian monarchy. Okay. Um, and he is the father of Charles the Simple. Okay. But Charles the Simple is born after Louis dies. So it made him a like posthumous child whose claim could initially be bypassed by older and more powerful rulers. Okay. So the kid never even had a chance. He just is born into a weak beginning, and it's really, I think, what explains why he spends so much of his life struggling to validate his hereditary legitimacy, right? And translate it into like political control. So all of that means that he is directly related by blood to Charlemagne. Okay. But I know we kind of have this vision of like the king and the son and the grandson, and they're all like nobody fucks with that. But um royal blood did not necessarily guarantee an easy path to the throne. Um, being a child during a time of severe political instability while you're technically supposed to be running it is tough. And he's dealing with repeated Viking attacks. We're smack dab in the middle of the Viking Age. Okay. And during the 8 and early 900s, Viking fleets repeatedly entered West Francia along the Seine and Loire rivers. Okay, and they'd sack settlements and force local magnates to organize defenses. All right,
Which
and
is terrifying.
it
You know what
horrifically
I mean? Like,
terrifying.
these are people that look homeless, but they're buff. It's like they're high on fentanyl, they're eating trash, and they got an axe. Oh
They
my
were
God. Yes. I'll be a Viking. I'll be a Viking. Yeah. No, these guys suck. These guys got a stammer.
no wonder he stuttered. Um,
Fuck, fuck,
the
fuck, fuck, fuck,
Vikings were
fuck.
definitely high on mushrooms. We know that they ate
Oh yeah.
mushrooms, so
That's crazy. I
isn't
hope I
that
get the
wild? Could
guy
you
that
imagine?
he comes in my hut and he's swinging his axe, but he sees like five of me. He's like, I was like, thank God I got the guy too high. I got the guy that took two apes.
Exactly. Could you imagine being a Viking high on mushrooms though during a raid? It would be fucking wild.
But this is, as old as time when you have a cult, aka a regime of Vikings, getting people high is how you get people to follow you. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's easier. Like, hey, we're gonna go take over 100 countries. It's gonna probably take more than your lifespan, and you're gonna die. You're not gonna see your wife's kids, but they're high. They're like, oh,
Yeah.
all right, yeah, 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 yeah.
And you see it today. I mean, as early as like the early 2000s, um, they were giving cot to kids and having them fight in wars in Africa, right? So, you're right.
They
This is as
gave
old as time.
meth to the kamikaze pilots in World War II. You're not gonna
And the
drive your
Nazis.
eh, you're not gonna drive your plane into a ship and kill yourself if you're sober. You're gonna be like, wait a second, can we just shoot missiles and machine guns? Isn't that
I'm
what
gonna
we have on the plane? So now the Vikings are coming in. There's
Yeah, so
war
he's
upon.
dealing with he's been dealing with these Viking attacks, and it really causes a lot of issues. And all of this leads to the Battle of Soissons.
And so, another chapter closes on the smouldering front lines, as our heroes with questionable aim and even more questionable life choices roll off into the haze once more. Historians may never fully understand what happened here today. Some say it was strategy, others say it was stupidity. Most agree it was probably the snacks. If you've survived this broadcast with your sanity intact, consider enlisting. Follow the show, share it with a fellow soldier, and prepare for the next mission. Until next time, stay alert, stay armored, and stay baked. This is Baked Battlefields, signing off.